I was raised, a religious background, very strict and structured, and I chose to follow a different path when I was younger. I hung out with a lot of wrong people and got into drugs, marijuana, crystal meth, crank, ecstasy, cocaine, alcohol. And I continued that through my first marriage. First marriage didn't work out. With my wife I have now, we were on a bad path too. We got into drugs. I remember I would get up in the morning and do me some meth, and I would go to work, and all day that's all I thought about was to hurry up and get home so I could get high again. Even though I know when you're on that stuff, you don't think people notice you, how messed up you are. But believe me, you can tell when people are messed up like that. Who I hurt the most? I'd have to say my kids. Because, a lot of times when I was doing drugs, I had to go take them to their moms, or just had to I got rid of them for a little while so I could do my thing. But basically I had to get rid of a lot of my friends that I had for a long time, and I hurt deep down, but they weren't changing. They wouldn't change with me. They wouldn't help me out. To me, that wasn't a true friend. I mean, they were still bringing it around. They were still always wanting me to do it with them, and it just wasn't happening. So I just had to let go of all ties. I started going to church with my mom. Now I'm a, believer. I go to church on a regular basis and love every minute of it. But he's changed my life. I mean, he's from what I used to be to now. I've heard so many people say you can't overcome that drug, and I'm living proof you can.
So truly, it's a real blessing. And tonight, as I was studying for Step 5, truly Step 5, as I've done many fifth steps, is kind of the turning point in our recovery. And I'm going to try to do it in a timely fashion here. But before that, let's just get focused. Lord, I thank you for another day above ground and out of prison. Lord, I thank you for what's going to happen here in the next several minutes, Lord, that you are going to enlighten us in a way that will change us forever. And we're not going to change back to what we were. We're going to become the people who we are and what you've called us to be. Lord, I pray for extra clarity. Lord, I pray for just concentration. Lord, I pray that people leave differently than they came. Lord, I pray for spiritual ears and spiritual eyes, that we may never be the same again, that we can grow closer to you, and you will do the things that you have told us you will do for us if we will just let you. Lord, remove me from the building and have your way in this conversation. In your name we pray, amen. Amen. So we're talking about Step 5, and just a real quick recap on the first 4. I mean, we know that if we went into a 4th step, that typically people like ourselves are only capable of getting so deep. We have walls surrounding us. We think they're walls of protection, but we fail to recognize these are walls that we put up around ourselves that keep us in a self-made prison. And I know one thing about a self-made prison. I know one thing about a literal incarceration with bars. When you're in a self-made prison, it is nothing nice. So when you get to the 5th step, the 5th step reads, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. Last week in our small group, it was funny as a gentleman was trying to describe what was going on to him and what happened with him over the weekend. It's like when you look at the word exact, people in recovery like to dance around things. They don't like to get exact. What exactly happened? We either minimize or fantasize. We minimize how bad it really was, or we fantasize that something that we really weren't. And when you look at the word admitted, we don't like to own things. We don't like to admit things. So what we do is we hide it from God. And to me that often makes me giggle to myself. It's like God doesn't know anyway. Like God doesn't know what we did or what we said or what we didn't say. But it says admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. Now, it doesn't say how you were wronged. A lot of us feel like we are the way we are because we've been wronged. And you hear me say it often, is if you've got a victim mentality, that you've got the short end of the stick of this life that you have, and you've got a victim mentality, you're never going to have victory. You're not going to have victory. So it says the exact nature of our wrongs. So as I was in this small group with our group last week, as this guy was dancing around the topic and not getting to the point, I said, do exactly what you did in your addiction. I said, if you went up to a bar and the bartender's looking at you, you're not going to take 20 minutes to describe what type of drink you want. You're going to get right to the point. When you go to the dope dealer, you don't sit there and hem and haw what you came to do there. You tell them exactly what you're there to do. If you go to the casino, you're not, when you don't hem and haw when you put your money across the table or put it in the slot machine. No, you're there on point with purpose. That's what we need to do in our recovery. We need to get exact. We need to tell exactly what we're feeling, exactly what we've done. And if you own it, you can be released from it. But as long as you don't own it, it owns you. And a lot of us have gone through our recoveries and our treatments in different facilities and institutions that we've been in, and we never get around to owning it. See, you might have did it, but you're not it. So we've got to own what we did, and that's the whole nature of the fifth step. But here's the thing. When you read how it works in AA, it says, rarely have we seen a person fail that has thoroughly followed our path. It's talking about rigorous honesty. And it's not so much hitting the fact of being honest with your fellows, it's being honest with yourself. See, I think where we fall short is we don't admit it to ourselves. And if I can lie to myself, I'll have no problem lying to you. Quite frankly, the majority of my life was a lie. I had so many lies. I mean, if I could lie to myself and tell myself I didn't need to go to meetings, I didn't need to get a sponsor, and I didn't need to make a step, or I don't need to go into a transitional living, I'm okay now, I just spent 30 days in treatment, life is good again, you're dead wrong. Because wherever you go, there you are. Just because the addiction is gone, you're still here. And the addiction wasn't the problem. The problem was me. A perspective problem, a coping problem. I could not manage my life, and that's why the second step says, came to believe that a power greater than yourself could restore you to sanity. What I found in all my different attempts at recovery is that the insanity was still there and the dope was gone. That's why we deal with the ism of alcohol. It's the ism, our behavior, our thought process, our inability to process feelings is the ism. If you've been labeled like I have, a dope fiend, well, the dope was gone and I was still a fiend. My behavior was warranted as a fiend. I was lying. I was manipulating in my recovery. I was telling people what they wanted to hear, but I never told them what they needed to hear. And say admit it. Say admit it. Amen. See, you've got to learn to admit. You'll never be able to do a 10th step unless you do a 5th step. So this is the key of really looking yourself in the mirror. In the AA 12 and 12, it says all of AA's 12 steps ask us to go contrary to our natural desires. So if you work a recovery program, it's going to go against what you want to do. We typically go for the easier, softer way. AA teaches us that half measures avail is nothing. I've learned that shortcuts are nothing but setbacks, but I've been taking shortcuts my whole life. I'm addicted to instant gratification, so I want something for nothing. I want my sobriety, but I don't want to pay for it. But I had to pay for my dope. I had to pay for my alcohol. I had to pay when I was gambling. So you get what you pay for. You get out what you put in, and that's what it's saying. This is going to go against your natural desires. Well, what are our natural desires? To quit. Our natural desires are to do it our way. Our natural desires are to take shortcuts. Our natural desires are to tell half-truths. Our natural desires are to do things when we feel like doing them. Those are all of our natural desires. And it says all of these deflate our ego. And it says when it comes to ego deflation, few steps are harder to take than step 5. But scarcely any step is more necessary for long-time sobriety and peace of mind than this one. So in order to have long-term sobriety, you have to have peace. I mean, I've never met a miserable recovering person that was able to stay sober for any period of time, because what we come to rely on is the one thing that will kill us, because the one thing that my life that I could count on is my dope. My dope always did what I wanted it to do, but after a while it did things to me that I didn't want to do. And that's why they teach us in the NA program that one's too many and 1,000's never enough. So what it's saying here in the literature is that you're not going to have long-term sobriety unless you do this. But again, our natural desires come in and we don't think we need to do this. I'm doing good now. I'm working now. I got some money in my pocket. My family will see me again. I know all the right words to say, but nothing has changed in the inside. And I'm going to get to that here in a minute, because it says, but of the things that really bother us and burn us, we say nothing. How often do you open your mouth when you've got something's bothering you? Very few. You internalize it, you rationalize it, you justify it. And the reason why we don't get real with what's bothering us, because once we become transparent by admitting what's bothering us, then the answer we might get, as you heard John talk about Jeremy, the answer might be different than the answer that you got in your head, so then you'll be wrong, and you don't want to be wrong. As long as it stays inside of you, you're always right. You're always right as long as you come to your own conclusions, but we fail to recognize that our best thinking got us here. How many good thinkers we got in here? My best thinking got me locked up. My best thinking got me homeless. My best thinking allowed me not to see my children without a supervised visit from the county. I mean, this is me I'm talking about. See, I need to talk about me. I can't pretend that I'm different now just because I put the crack pipe down. No, I still have these natural tendencies. I still have the natural tendencies to really give you a piece of my mind. I have a natural tendency to not tell you what's bothering me, because when I don't tell you what's bothering me, then I'm the victim. You have wronged me. But that's not what this step is about. It's saying the exact nature of your wrongs, not my wrongs. And if you go live your life feeling like you've been wronged, it is no life at all. And it says certain distressing and humiliating memories we tell ourselves ought to be shared with, not to be shared with anybody. This will remain our secret. We hear it all the time. You're only as sick as your secrets. Let me tell you something. There ain't nothing you could tell any of us in this room that would surprise us of what you've done. We think that we're so unique. And it says, not a soul must ever know. We hope that they'll go to the grave with us. Let me tell you something. You'll go to the grave quicker if it goes to the grave with you. Because you're only as sick as your secrets. And your secrets could be as small as somebody just put you in check before the meeting and made you do something. Now you're resentful the whole meeting. That's your secret. Because we got a sense of entitlement. Because we think that our way is always the right way, but we fail to recognize when I did it my way, where did I end up? In places I never thought I would go. It says, what are we likely to receive from step 5? For one thing, we shall get rid of the terrible sense of isolation we've all had. Now, isolation can be defined as many different things. You could be in a room full of this many people and still feel lonely, and then wonder why nobody's paying attention to you while you push everybody away. Isolation can be defined as nobody knows what's going on in your head. Just you know what you're thinking or thinking about doing or doing. So that's what's really hitting it. The word isolation is really hit here in step 5. It says, almost without exception, alcoholics are tortured by loneliness. Even before our drinking got bad and people began to cut us off, nearly half of us suffered the feeling that we didn't quite belong. So God puts us in a program like this, and we still have a hard time getting connected because we're not going to be transparent. We're not going to admit where we're at. We're not going to admit where we're feeling. This is a perfect opportunity in step 5 to get connected to God, to another person, and yourself. God is all about relationships. People about relationships. So God brings you to a place like this, but you can learn how. Because the reason why I felt the way I felt the majority of life, because I couldn't get connected to anybody. Either we are shy and dare not to draw near others, or we are apt to be noisy, good fellows, craving for attention and companionship, but never getting it, at least to our way of thinking. Sometimes I think people relapse just to get attention. What did we do as little children? We had outbursts because nobody was paying attention to us. But I see grown men and women doing the same thing. Outbursts. Nobody, and it's not that anybody isn't paying attention to us. It's just that we're so lonely that we won't let anybody in, and we're filled with isolation, even though we could be Miss Busybody, Chatty Cathy, but still we're lonely. And what it's saying here is so true, because it's so important to grasp. It says, when we reached AA for the first time in our lives, stood among people who seemed to understand. The sense of belonging was tremendously exciting. But if you're anything like me and anything like the 1,000+ people that have walked in these doors in 10 years, that excitement of being connected when you first get here and you feel like somebody can understand where you're at, because you're really yourself at that point. But what happens and why the 12 steps are in play is wherever you go, there you are. The pink cloud bursts, and there you're sitting, dead sober, feeling your pain. And then it's not so exciting anymore to be sober. Then you can't even get connected like you did when you were 30 days clean. Now everybody's really at difference with you, because that's why the steps take place. After step 1, it doesn't deal with anything about addiction. It deals with you and God and other people. Because we have a problem with people. We have a problem with ourselves. That's why step 5 is so awesome, because you can become one with God, with another person, and get to know yourself. And if you don't get to know yourself, you won't be able to see yourself coming. And when you show up in your natural desires, it ain't nothing nice. But you're not by yourself. You're not by yourself. And what it's saying here is so critical, because when the excitement wears off, what do? We thought the isolation problem had been solved, but we soon discovered that while we weren't alone anymore in a social sense, we still suffered from many old pangs of anxious apartness. Until we had talked with complete candor of our conflicts, see, they're internal conflicts, had listened to someone else do the same thing, we still didn't belong. Step 5 was the answer. It was the beginning of true kinship with man and God. This vital step was also the means by which we began to feel that we could be forgiven, no matter what we had done. And in order to be forgiven, you have to forgive. That's biblical. So a lot of us that feel like we're wronged, we don't look at the exact nature of our wrongs, so we hold resentments, which the 4th step deals with. So we don't want to forgive. But if you were anything like me, I'd cause mass chaos in my own life and my family's life. And I'd come out of treatment and everybody forgive me right away. But yet I'm a ball of resentments. Because we expect things from people that we don't even give to people. That's one of our character defects. And don't get so offended, because I'm only talking about me here. But it's until we talk with complete candor, that's being totally real, totally transparent, letting somebody else into our thoughts and our lives, our past, present, and future. And what it's saying here, a moral inventory had persuaded us to go an all-around forgiveness was desirable. I mean, it's one thing to think you're forgiven, it's another thing to experience forgiveness. But it's only when we're resolutely tackled step 5 that we inwardly knew that we were able to receive forgiveness and give it too. Another great dividend we may expect from confiding our defects to another human being is humility, a word often misunderstood. To those who have made progress in AA, it amounts to clear recognition of what and who we really are. Are you willing to face you? Are you just going to hit the restart button and pretend like it never happened? Are you too full of shame and guilt that you think you're so bad that you can't share what you've been through and what you've done? It's difficult, but nothing good is ever easy. We have to admit where we were to go to where God wants us to be. And that's what it's talking about here. You know, it talks about another great dividend we may expect from confiding our defects is humility. To those who have made progress in AA, it amounts to clear recognition of what and who we really are, followed by a sincere attempt to become who we could be. Who I and what I really am is I'm a down and dirty drug addict. I'm a terrible father. I left my kids for crack cocaine. I spent all the money the family had on drugs. and they didn't see me for months on end and I showed up in handcuffs. That's who I really am. And until I figure that out, I will never become who I'm supposed to be. You can't pretend that what something that didn't happen and hit the restart button. See, I accept that side of me. Now, if I don't, now in the Bible it says the new creation, the old is gone. Yeah, I'm a new creation. But I had to own what I did. I had to own what I did. And part of the owning process over all the years I tried to get sober was I'd either minimize it or fantasize it. I would tell you if I was a gambler, I'm some big kingpin when I was playing with penny slots. I would tell you that I'm selling all this dope when I was begging for dope crawling around on the floor. See, we've got to understand, we've got to get real. Who are you? I mean, if you're trying to fool somebody, you're the only one getting fooled. And that's what the fifth step is really talking about getting real and becoming what you could be. See, I got tired of people telling me in my mid-30s that I got potential. That was okay when I was 14. So I wanted to begin to look at this side of me that I didn't understand, that I continuously ran from. And it says, therefore, our first practical move toward humility must consist of recognizing our deficiencies. In order to be efficient, you've got to admit that you're deficient. I mean, what's going on with you? What's happening? What are you thinking? What have you done? Let's get real here. Let's admit to God, ourselves, and another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. We all have deficiencies. You're going to have deficiencies in your recovery. Don't pretend to be something that you're not. Just be you, the person that God created you to be. The good, the bad, and the indifferent side of you. Just because you quit doing dope, gambling, or drinking, you're still a bust-a-move fiend. But we pretend like we're something that we're not. And what it's saying here is no defect can be corrected unless it clearly see what it is. But are we capable of clearly seeing what our defect is? I love it when I do fifth steps with people. They come in with their paper and they think they're going to be out of there in 20 minutes. Because they don't even realize what the defect is, the deficiency, until it's pointed out. I think if I would have known what my defects clearly were, I probably would have attempted to correct them. But it says, but what we have to do more than just see. We soon found that we could not wish or will them away. Have you ever wished you were a different type of person? And as much as you wished you didn't lie, you wish you didn't cheat, you wish you didn't get high, you still did it. This thing's bigger than you. You can't wish your way out of here. You can't wish your way into 2 years of recovery like Jeremy and 7 years like Jason. You can't do it. 1 year like Ben. It's a program of action. We had to seek outside help if we're really surely to know and admit the truth about ourselves. You have to tell the truth about you. It's a necessity. And you're not going to offend or freak anybody out. And the literature will tell you that here in a second. The help of God and another human being. Only by discussing ourselves, holding back nothing. But we love to hold stuff back. We like to tell you 90% of the story. We don't want to own exactly what went down. And if we do own it, we blame somebody else for it. But it says, holding back nothing only by being willing to take advice. Addicts and alcoholics will only take advice when they got nothing. It's easy to give God everything when you got nothing, but when you got a job, you got money, are you still going to take advice? It says take advice and accept direction could set a foot on the road of straight thinking. Well, that's foreign to me. Solid honesty, I don't know how to do that. And genuine humility, no, as soon as I get everything back that I lost, I ain't listening to nobody. I see it all the time. It's a recipe for disaster. And it nails it right here. It says, when we are honest with another person. See, sometimes in order to be honest with yourself, you have to start with another person. Because we don't know how to be honest with ourselves. That's why step 5 is so important. When we are honest with another person, it confirms that we have been honest with ourselves and with God. So God uses people. And it says, how many times have you heard a well-intentioned people claim the guidance of God when it was all too plain that they were sorely mistaken? lacking both practice and humility. Like, all of a sudden you've been sober 8 months, now you know what's best for you. No, you don't. I even hear people say, I believe this is what God wants for me. I'm like, I didn't know you were that close to God. I've never seen you with a Bible, never seen you work the steps. Now you're some God-fearing, conscious giant. And that's what the 12 and 12 is saying here. It says it right here. It says, both practice humility, they are deluded themselves and were able to justify the most arrant nonsense. On the ground, this was what God had told them. It is worth noting that these people, now this is critical right here. It is worth noting that people of very high spiritual development always insist on checking with friends or spiritual advisors the guidance they have received from God. See, when you feel like you've received a word from God, you got to go to your mentor. And now don't kid yourself, because if it says friend there, well, you know what? I can find any friend that will agree with me. You want to go move out and you think it's your best time to move out? Go ask somebody else what they think who wants to move out too. You think it's a good idea for you to go to watch the hockey game this weekend at Joe Sensor's and you're an alcoholic? Well, don't ask the guy that don't go into the bars. Ask the guy that will be there with you. That's not iron sharpening iron. You can't get sharpened by a butter knife. You can find anybody to co-sign your decisions. We learned that at a young age. If Dad said no, I went to Mom. Are you in it to win it? Or are you in it to win it? Period. Are you willing to take advice and accept direction for the rest of your life, not just till you get 2 years clean? Well, I'm grown. I know what. Look at me. I worked 40 hours this week. I got $100 in my bank account, and I paid my child support the first time in 10 years. I don't need to listen to a word you said. But when you fall flat on your face is when you get that sense of humility and you listen to anything. And here's the thing. When you are humble, God always exalts you. But when you exalt yourself, you will be humbled, the Bible says. And once you become humbled, then follows humiliation. We've got to learn how to admit and stop the nonsense. We need to check with our spiritual advisors and do what they say. And it says, many AAs, once agnostic or atheists, tell us that during the stage of step 5 that they actually felt the presence of God. And even those who had faith already often became conscious of God as they never were before. This feeling of being at one with God and man is emerging. I love watching people emerge in their recovery with God. Not submerging, not, whatever else words. It's from isolation. Being one in the community, being one in the we of the program, through the open and honest sharing of the terrible burden of guilt, brings us to a resting place where we prepare ourselves for the following steps with full and meaningly sobriety. Is your sobriety meaningful? Has your freedom cost you something? Because we know that freedom isn't free. And what it says now in NA, it works how and why. It says, we built this foundation on spiritual principles as surrender, honesty, trust, faith, willingness, and courage, with each step forward in our recovery. See, there's no such thing as, I'm standing still. I'm not moving forward in my recovery. Either you're going forwards or backwards. There is no such thing as standing still. And we all know that complacency leads to captivity. Complacency leads to captivity, so we need to continue, as Jason Campbell has been a great example for us, to move forward. The farther you get away from your relapse, the closer you should be to God and the more you should be doing for Him. You don't ever let up. I have more accountability today than I ever had in my life. Because I need it. Because I got natural desires of busting a move and quitting and running and being a sellout. It says, we reaffirm our commitment to recovery by immediately working in step 5. If we allow our feelings of shame and fears of change and rejection to stop our progress, our problems will only be compounded. Have you ever pretended that you didn't have a problem? Did it grow? It grows. It doesn't go away. It's like you get a bill in the mail and you put it in the drawer and you think it's paid. you'll get a second notice that you didn't pay your bill. But we don't like to face things, and that's what it's saying. It'll only be compounded if we stop moving forward in our recovery and we cease making every possible effort to recover. We will have given into the disease of addiction. See, some of us right now don't even know that we're saying yes to our addiction. You say yes to addiction by saying no to recovery. And you think you're in recovery just because you're not using. You're not in recovery if you're not using, you're just dry. And you're going to get wet real soon. You know I don't teach this isn't a teenage camp. I come real with it. If you receive it, I'm not going to tell you what you want to hear and give you a yay, rah, rah. That's where people start tripping. They love me. Oh, great job. Good to see you. You look great. But when I got to correct them, they pout and they leave. Because they take correction as rejection. If anybody loves you enough to correct you, you should stay close to that person. And that's what it just said in the text. It says, we listen to people. You know, I don't like it when people come to me and like, why are you asking for advice when you know you ain't going to follow it? Why did you just waste 10 minutes of my life? And I can speak so boldly because I take 100% direction of my mentor. That's why I am where I am. You know, and it's so important to really watch. It says, working this step with the support of a sponsor and a loving God is a way of putting into practice the decision to allow God to take care for our will in our lives. I mean, that's a step 3 by working the rest of the steps. That decision, like most decisions we make, must be followed with action. The Bible says faith without works is dead. Following this 3rd step decision with the action of the 4th and the 5th steps will lead a closer relationship with our higher power. I love it. I just talked to my buddy who just got out of prison, and he's done time the majority of his adult life. Grew up and went to high school. He always says to me, damn what they say, watch what they do, and you'll know who they are. Damn what they say, watch what they do, and you'll know who they are. All of us can tell, we're good talkers. I can tell you exactly what you need to hear to make you think that I'm okay. But well-intentions never work out. I mean, and what it's saying here is so important. It says, why is it so important that we make an admission to God? Because this is a spiritual program, and our whole purpose is to awaken spiritually. In the past, some of us felt that we weren't worthy of a relationship with God. Our secrets blocked us our ability to feel an acceptance of the love of the power. When we reveal something about ourselves, we draw closer to the higher power and experience the unconditional love and acceptance which springs from that power. The feeling that God of our understanding accepts us no matter what we've done, it says it enhances our acceptance of ourselves. I love doing 5th step because people that are really doing a 5th step, they tell me something, they think I'm going to run out of the room after they told me. Or I'm not going to be your friend anymore. You're just too bad of a person. It's not how it works with a person or with God. God just wants you to get real. Again, there's nothing that you're going to tell another person that God doesn't already know. And what happens when you get real with somebody you're doing a 5th step with, they now feel real, that they can get real with you. I'm not going to get real with somebody that I know that's got walls up, that's a short timer, that's got different motives. Why would I get real with you? I'm not going to do it. I mean, I get real with a crowd of 170 tonight. I don't know what you guys are thinking or doing, but I'm getting real. And I'm going to walk out of here free. If you walk out of here in the same condition you walked in here with, there's something drastically wrong. There's something drastically wrong. Because this is good information that God put on the planet for people like ourselves to get free. It says the process we've undertaken made us aware of the exact nature of our wrongs. That's by being transparent. The exact nature of those wrongs are character defects. I looked up the definition of the word character, a way a person thinks, feels, and behaves. I didn't have a drug problem. I had a character problem. My yeses weren't yeses and my no's weren't no's. My no's were yeses and my yeses were no's. I told you what you wanted to hear, but I did the exact opposite. I would sit in front of you and ask your opinion the whole time knowing that I wasn't going to follow through with anything that came out of your mouth. Character. If you can learn character by asking God to remove your defects of character, then you'll get character. We didn't get here because we were men and women of character. Just face that about yourself. And don't feel bad about it. I sat with a friend of mine last night, and it's like, man, I had a decent upbringing. I had my own, all this stuff. But, at the end of the day, I had nothing. I had no character. Character is everything. Only thing that we can take in this world with us is your character, your name. What does your name stand for? I don't want my name to stand for crack addict anymore. I don't want, when people hear Jeff Hill, they think of liar, manipulator. What does your name mean to you? The Bible says your name is more precious than gold. God is about restoring your name. So your name can stand for something, and if you stand for something, you'll quit falling for everything. If you knew you were deceived, you wouldn't be deceived. And that's what it's saying here. It's so important. It says, we know the patterns of our lives. See, stop looking at the problem and look at the pattern that led to the problem. We've got to start. That's what step 5 does when you do it with a solid mentor or sponsor that we're rooted in here's how my life looked. I was rooted in dishonesty, fear, selfishness, and many other defects of character. We've seen the whole spectrum of our defects and are ready for something new. With our readiness, we move on to step 6. NA basic text, it says the 5th step is the key to freedom. It allows us to live clean and in the present. Sharing the exact nature of our wrongs sets us free to live. I don't want to exist in recovery. I want to have the abundant life. I want to laugh. I want to hear the wind go through the wind. I want to appreciate the sunshine. I want to have friends. I want to be a good father. I want to be a good husband. I want to be a stand-up friend. I want to be good in business where I mean something. My word means something. Not when people hear me say something, they just roll their eyes and say to themselves, yeah, right. I was that person that they said, yeah, right to. But God had another plan for me. But I had to learn how to do these things. But first I had to admit the things I had done. And it says, holding on to our past would eventually sicken us and keep us from taking part in our new life. See, some of us carry our past with us. We all do. That's the purpose of the 5th step. For years we avoided seeing ourselves as we really were. It says we were ashamed of ourselves and felt isolated from the rest of the world. The word isolation again. Now that we have a shameful part of our past trapped, we can sweep it out of our lives if we face it and admit it. It would be tragic to write all of it down and shove it in a drawer. These defects grow in the dark and die in the light of exposure. See, I looked in the Bible today in Luke 8:17 and Mark 4:22. It says, anything that is disclosed is meant to be revealed. And it says in the Bible, which is the 5th step, it says, basically, if you don't disclose it, it'll continually manifest itself in other behaviors. You don't need to run from your past. You need to run to your past so it doesn't affect your present. You don't need to forget everything and run because we're the F-it kings. You need to face everything and recover and quit tripping about false evidence appearing real. You need to be you. You need to get real. Need to admit you're not going to surprise anybody. And it's so important as it says this. It says, these defects grow dark and they die in the light of exposure. If you don't expose them, they will continue to expose you. You can't run from this side of you anymore. You have to expose it. And then once you learn to expose it, you ask God to remove the defect of character. You humbly ask Him to remove your shortcoming. You make a list of those who have harmed. You review it with your sponsor. You make direct amends. Only then are you able to promptly admit when you're wrong. Otherwise, you'll spend your whole life being wronged again. The 5th step is so critical. It's so critical, and it says it right here. You cannot expect these things to reveal themselves. Our embarrassment is eventually overcome as we can avoid future guilt. Isn't it something when you feel guilty and you don't admit it and admit what you did, all you do is go create future guilt? I see it all the time in recovery circles. I can't deal with all these consequences. So go create some more. Then come back and try to deal with the ones you couldn't deal with to begin with on top of the 20 ones you just created. Be smarter than the addict. Be smarter than the devil. Basic instructions before leaving Earth. 12 steps, 12 traditions. The AA Big Book. The NA 2 different texts. The GA book is phenomenal. Utilize the tools that God has given you. I heard it said last week that somebody doesn't believe in the 12 steps in one of these small groups. I wanted to come down there and I wanted to tell that person what's up, and I didn't even waste my time, because a person that says something like that can't hear you anyway. I ain't gonna waste my breath on you. You want to go on a little Bible study with me and tell me all this stuff you know about this book? You don't know nothing. You think you know, and by the looks of you, it ain't looking good. And I'm not afraid to get that direct. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to tell you what you want to hear, because if I tell you what you want to hear and you go out there and die, your blood is on my hands. I'm not going to co-sign your behavior. I'm not going to coddle you. I'm going to confront you to change you. Amen. This isn't boys or girls Cub Scout camp. If you rely on the attaboys, they'll never come as much as you need them. It's time to man up and grow up. And I'm not just talking to the men. I'm talking to the women too. I want to avoid future guilt. It says, once we had a spiritual theories. I mean, all these great theory people that don't apply nothing. We now begin to awaken a spiritual reality. This initial examination of ourselves usually reveals some behavior patterns we don't particularly like. I hated leaving my kids for dope. I hated being a liar. I hated being a manipulator. I hated being a thief. I hated being a cheat. I hated having to lie to my boss where I was in the afternoon when I was getting high and I told him I was on a sales call. I hated that. I hated cheating on my expense reports. I hated taking my parents' money and using it for dope. I hated robbing from my wife at the time and telling her a lie and living in a hotel. I hated it. But I did it anyway. I had to tell him myself. The initial examination of ourselves usually reveals some patterns of behavior. However, facing these patterns and bringing them into the open makes it possible for us to deal with them constructively. If you don't deal with it constructively, there will be destruction. Again. We cannot make these changes alone. We need the help of God as we understand Him in the fellowship of this program. James 5:16. Confession is the gateway to God and freedom. Confess to one another, the Bible says. This is where the fifth step comes. It says your faults, your slips, your false steps, your offenses. Confess when you feel like you're wrong. Confess when you're offended. Confess when somebody burns you. Confess. What you behold, you become. It says, and pray also for one another that you may be healed and restored to your spiritual tone of mind and heart. The earnest, heartfelt, continued prayers. See, I had earnest and heartfelt prayers in the backseat of a cop car. I had earnest and heartfelt prayers when I bounced a check at the casino and I knew my wife was going to find out, but I did it anyway. I had honest and heartfelt prayers when I was driving drunk trying to get home and there was a cop behind me. I had honest and heartfelt prayers when my heart couldn't stop palpitating because I just shot or smoked some dope and I thought I was going to have a heart attack, and they had to put me in a tub full of ice just to revive me, and they still called 911. Those were honest and heartfelt prayers, and you know what? They worked. I'm still here. We need to have honest and heartfelt prayers on a daily basis, even when times are good. The prayer of the righteous. Don't be afraid of the word righteous. You're all righteous because you all chose to get back up. You didn't stay down. Each and every one of you is righteous. Unrighteous people stay down. Righteous people get back up. It says the prayer of a righteous man or woman makes tremendous power available, dynamic in its working. We need to be transparent and vulnerable in order to be powerful. God bless you. We'll take a 10-minute break.